Okay, good morning. I understand this is an early session for everyone. Maybe if I can invite the participants from the back, you want to join us here in the front? If in case it gets boring for you, you of course are a free person, you can leave anytime you want, but I think it's better to be actively present and we have a good interactive discussion. Maybe the lady from over there also, do you want to join this table here, maybe the center table? Yeah. All right. Okay, good. Okay. And how about the gentleman in the back? Are you part of the team or technical also? Okay, so this is a very intimate conversation today. I hope we have more people joining. Yeah. So let me open the seminar. So I am Suzanne Ross. I'm the Chief of Knowledge Management of ADB. My team also established and managed ADB's first bank-wide innovation hub. And we offer innovation management services and support. And when we started to discover what innovation management is about, we also started to see a lot of need for behavioral insights, right? And to set the context of this webinar, of this seminar today, while many of us still think that technology is the beacon of hope, right, to save us, to allow us energy transition and a low carbon future, what we, coming from sociology and psychology, believe is that actually a lot depends on human behavior, right? And for those who aren't so familiar with behavioral science really stands at the intersection of economics, sociology, psychology, and even the law. And one of the most famous behavioral scientists is Professor Cass Sunstein, who's actually a constitutional legal scholar. And he actually also advises ADB. He has written a paper actually on internalities and externalities and the fuel economy. So I can strongly recommend this paper. But back to behavioral science. So what we believe is that we need to pay a lot more attention to human behavior, because we as humans, we all have biases. And maybe if you think about yourself, we have the present bias, which actually is very relevant for development organizations too, because we tend to think in the next 3-4 years, but maybe not 20-30 years. We have the optimism bias. We always think things will turn out better than they actually do. We have a planning bias where we think things will be easier than they actually are. And then we have cognitive scarcity bias, where we actually simplify how things work. And that is also very relevant for technology applications. So now all of this comes together when we think about energy efficiency, and we think about how do we make people use more renewable energy, right? Because you might think, oh, we just give them incentives. We make it, we give them tax incentives or other incentives, but actually studies show it doesn't work that way, even if it makes sense, because we have all these biases. And so in this seminar today, we would like to share with you 3 examples of projects that actually recognize human behavior and human biases, and that found solutions to link technology solutions with behavior and create, not just as we call them, to change how communities or how individuals use energy. So with that, I'm handing over now to my colleague Naoki Sakai, who is the co-designer of this seminar. He is, I think you will talk about yourself, right? He's a former colleague at ADB and now an entrepreneur. So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this is quite flexible and a very casual session. So let's talk, each other. Okay, thank you, Susan. So my name is Naoki Sakai, the CEO of D-Sharing, the climate tech startup. So we developed the Nudge Digital project for 5 years with Ministry of Environment, Government of Japan, in Japan. And we made a considerable success, and now we want to transfer it to developing countries. But this is not an effort any single organization can undertake alone. That's why where ADB, Susan, you come in. So I do hope that ADB, Susan, knowledge team should act as a so-called honest knowledge broker, matching the technology seeds of the developed country like us with the needs of developing countries. I believe that the ADB colleague is now here. So let's discuss about that. So this workshop should not be a standalone meeting. So today's meeting is a stepping stone in our journey, so toward creating a platform that will continuously build knowledge sharing together with you. So in this upcoming session, we'll go deeper into how this example can be tailored to suit the needs of DMCs, developing member countries. I strongly encourage each of you to please actively listen, engage, and participate in the later part of the discussions. So please let me first, as a first presenter, please. Okay. I will quickly summarize my point, okay? So to achieve 100% renewable energy of entire power grid, we need to take the 4 key steps. I named it RE 1, 2, 3, 4. The first phase involves a supply side approach where any form of the renewable energy at the phase 1 should be introduced at any time using the feed-in tariff, FIT. Then second phase, focus on more demand side. So environmentally conscious enterprise, I would say Google, Apple, but it's not really, I don't know. Anyway, so the environmentally conscious enterprise construct their own solar power plant and develop the corporate power purchase agreement, the PPAs. As a result, the solar power is a low-hanging technologies, dominates the market, creating a significant gap between day and night. Currently in Japan, we are now entering the phase 3, where solar power supply frequently exceeds the demand in daytime, necessitating the curtailment of the solar power generation. So conversely, no renewable energy supply during the nighttime, therefore heavily relying on fossil-based power generation. This shift results in increased market price of the coal-fired power generation and a higher risk of the power outage. Therefore, it's essential to shift the demand for electricity consumption to daytime hours. So let's consider electric vehicles as an example. When do most people charge their EVs? It's typically happen at the night. However, if a large number of EVs are charged simultaneously during the nighttime, when the majority of the electricity supply come from fossil fuel, leading to increased CO2 emission and higher costs and outage risks. So this presents a significant opportunity for employing nudges and digital technologies to promote daytime EV charging. We introduced the EAST framework, maybe FEAST, developed by the British Behavioral Insight Team, BIT. The EAST stands for E, easy to understand, A, attractive to behave well, S, social, utilizing social capital, the power of community, and timely intervention. So to make the concept of the easy to understand more accessible, we introduced the concept of hourly CO2 emission factors, so which represent the total carbon emission resulting from the total power generation. People can easily understand that the CO2 density is doubled during the night time. So by visualizing this kind of information, consumer can be scored based on their average individual carbon factor over a certain period of time. So the score is higher if more energy is consumed during nighttime, and the score is lower if consumed in daytime. So with this framework, we can develop a logical framework where the output involves not only the reduction of consumption, the kilowatt hours, but also the reduction of the emission factors. So we can visualize the reduction by showing this kind of function. And for this particular project, our team has developed a smartphone game application that displays record, ranking, and provide small monetary reward based on the scores and any ranking achieved. So to enable this kind of game, we require 3 types of big data: on-site power generation data. Are you using this? Please. Okay, so to enable this game, we require 3 types of the big data: on-site power generation data, net metering data, and hourly carbon intensity data of the power grid. So by utilizing AI, we can forecast, estimate consumption for the upcoming hours, set it as a baseline, and calculate the reduction in volume. So we can even measure the performance, record it on the blockchain, and create NFT as a carbon credit for trading. So this approach adds an element of the fun and attract people interest in the sustainable practices. So if you find this topic is interesting, I invite you to join my breakout session to explore it further. Now, I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Ren Joshi, who will present the community microgrid project, and followed by a discussion on Mars project, which serves as another remarkable example of the nudge through innovation in Japan and the DMCs. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'll just wait for the slides to load. So while that's happening, let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm part of the Pacific operations at ADB. I used to work previously in the South Asia region. And while I was there, I used to cover some of our work in India, Maldives, and Bangladesh. So today, I'll talk a little bit about some of the work we've done at the Maldives, as well as some of the work we're trying to do in the Pacific. So let me just start with the Pacific. ADB has about 14 developing member countries in that region. And while what I've done is I've kind of helped look at what the access figures are in terms of electricity access. But what's interesting is you'll find several of these places have small islands, and the access figures are about 90%, 95% or more. Some of the places like Papua New Guinea or the Solomons still have lower access rates. But what's interesting is those access figures are based on diesel gensets. So over the next 5 years or 7 years, particularly as you start trying to hit these ambitious climate goals, there's an intense focus on trying to decarbonize these small grids and bring in solar and battery storage in various forms. It could also be other forms of renewable energy. In some places, you have access to hydro or wind. So that, again, just gives you a sense of the very ambitious goals the Pacific countries have set for themselves. And I've just picked up a sprinkling of some of these targets in terms of what they've set out for 2025 or 2030. And in some cases, some of this is even older. And they're kind of reevaluating and trying to understand what it means in terms of how they should move. But there are very interesting implications in terms of there is the requirement to go green. At the same time, the impact on costs. Diesel is expensive. It's about, depending on where you are, it's about 40 US cents a kilowatt hour. And so that's what we're seeing in a lot of these places in the North Pacific, where there's not really any form of hydropower. But then once you start putting solar into the grid, you will have a slight dip as the initial amount of solar energy goes in and kind of reduces diesel. But over a period of time, if you're trying to ramp up the solar, as Naoki Sakai-san was showing, once you go towards phase 3 and phase 4, and that happens very fast in a small island when you have 100 kilowatts of demand. So you can go very quickly from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. But then the nature of the capital investments you need ramp up dramatically. So you will need to oversize your solar PV, you will need to oversize your battery storage, because you'll need to then work with challenges about integrating. And so I have 2 things to share with you today. One is on the case study 1, which is on what we've done in the Maldives. We can go to the next slide. So this is an example from the island of Diffusi, where ADB partnered with GCEP and Kansai Electric and a couple of other agencies in terms of putting in place an ice machine, which created certain amount of behavioral change in the community given they saw this as a productive energy asset. So that's one example of something that's working there. And ADB now is in the process of scaling this up in many more islands with ADB's own funds. Now, this again has some interesting implications in a Pacific context, particularly in places like Fiji, where we're looking at providing support on fixing grids where demand has grown much faster than the available supply. And there's potential engagement with partners such as the climate funds in terms of how we can scale that up across islands. There's also the FSM, where we are working on greenfield grids and how to take it forward. The other case study we have is from Maharashtra in India. This is a place where ADB supported a lot of investments in high voltage distribution for farmers. If you look at the left, there are a couple of places where the consumption has been fairly low. Maharashtra is a very diverse state, but I'll take you to the next slide, where our interventions have largely focused on trying to support private sector solar, trying to support public sector grids, replacement of pump sets. And the fourth part is really where the nudge behavior comes in, in terms of drip irrigation and trying to, provide some kind of a conditional benefit transfer. So there are some interesting implications there that we're going to be rolling out over the next year or so. We'll get into more details during the breakout, but I just wanted to bring those two up as places where ADB is trying to not just look at capital investments and TA support, but also trying to see how we can work with communities to change their behavior. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think the first one shows nudging at the individual level with gamification. The second one, and I think you'll go into this later, Len, is about how the effects of nudging behavior in communities so that there's shared responsibility for managing assets and to see the benefits of having these assets in place. And now we'll hear from Tamaka-san, and then we will break into 3 groups to have a deep dive on each of these topics.
My name is Simio Tanaka, President and CEO of ZenMob. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We are the previous please. We are IT company that develop IT solutions called SMOC that powers public transportation and shared mobility, such as car sharing. We headquartered in Tokyo and we have subsidiary in Philippines. Next slide, please. We work in several countries, of course, in Japan and here in the Philippines. Also, we have a project in Brunei and Mozambique, and a new project going to start in Canada. So we work in several countries. And next, we have tackled with several themes. First one is congestion. We see this scenery in globally. Next slide, please. The other one is the imbalance of the demand supply, meaning some cases the passenger waiting for the vehicles. On the other hand, some places vacant vehicle is waiting. So we want to tackle with those imbalances. Next slide, please. So we want to discipline by using IT. So called the SMOC. So I want to explain the many features of the SMOCs. We have 3. Next slide, please. First one is we optimization of the scheduling by using AI. For example, tomorrow is Saturday. Our system can create the best scheduling for the Saturday morning. Next slide, please. Also, the second one is the vehicle interval adjustment controls. In other words, headway system. Even if we have a good scheduling, the vehicle interval is become fluctuated. Some cases, interval become too short and too long. It's not convenient for the passengers. The system automatically estimates the best interval between the car, and that recommend that each drivers you should drive faster, slower, and keep the speed. Next slide, please. Last one is the driver's performance monitoring. Even if you have a good scheduling, driver tend to be sabotaged. Maybe we can evaluate, we can visualize the efficiency, productivity of the drivers. Right. Next slide, please. No slide. How about this? Is that? あ、わかりました。はい。So we have a project in Philippines and do this. And next slide, please. We also next slide, please. We also now proceeding with a new project in the crack areas by using 23 EV buses, 5 modernized jeepney, 1 autonomous vehicles. So we also proceeding with a new transportation system for small cities. So let me see. There's okay.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, this is Kimura of Asian Gateway, founders and the CEO. Okay, could you show? Okay. Yeah, my company is a clean tech focusing on green transition support using the Japanese government subsidy. It's called the JCM, Joint Crediting Mechanism. It's a bilateral carbon credit between Japan and the Philippines, Indonesia, blah, blah. 26 countries is a JCM partner country. By 2025, India and Brazil will be JCM partner. Okay, as a organizer of this joint crediting mechanism subsidy on renewable energy, like PV, solar, and hydropower and wind power, like this, and energy efficiency. Yeah, inverter, air conditioning system, and chiller, boiler, blah, blah. And also, especially, we are focusing on zero emission vehicle promotion in Southeast Asia, mainly. It's okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is our project. It's just one of them. Yeah, in Cambodia, we installed PV rooftop solar, and in Chile, South America, to develop biomass power plant using rice husk. And in Vietnam, a very huge, wide rooftop to deploy solar. And in Mongolia and Chile, and other Sri Lanka now, and Indonesia hydropower we are developing now. Okay, next slide, please. And also, yeah, this is the last slide. We are focusing on a task force climate-related financial disclosure, TCFD, yeah, to make clear carbon footprint and to analyze the impact of climate change. It's a TCFD reporting is a mandatory request from Japanese government to Japanese big company. So our company focusing on JCM and TCFD. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kimura-san. And I apologize this kind of malfunction of presentation. Now I'll hand over this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So you saw different examples. I think the last example showed that we need good data and analytics that then can be visualized and shared with companies or people to nudge and create feedback mechanisms for certain behaviors, right? That's why you know, some people say data is the next big currency, or it already is, but it's important to give these feedback mechanisms to companies and individuals. So we heard about individual nudging. We heard about community nudging from Len George. We spoke about transport, where we look at human behavior to actually enhance transport efficiency. And then we heard about analytics to change also companies' behavior and contribute to green financing opportunities. So what we'll do now is we'll split into 3 groups. So we have one group in the front. The group in the front will be for individual energy use, Fun Feast. Yeah, Fun Feast. Exactly. And then we have, I think, Len George on the Pacific Island communities. We have him on this table here, where you can learn more about this project. And then we have, yes, it's going to be there. Yes, on this table. Okay. Yes. Okay. So maybe if you can already move to your respective tables, and then the audience here, please split yourself into those groups that you are most interested in hearing. And we have around 30 minutes for this discussion to hear more details. And then it would be good if you can identify one person in your group to report back. What are your lessons learned in terms of bringing together behavioral insights and technology, and then we close the session.
Yes. So, you know, we are now in March advance. So now 9:24. So
Yeah.
let's close it at 10 a.m. Then we have another enough discussion time, and Kimura-san, you can make another presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you very much for the very active discussion. Now we are at the wrap up time. So I would like to ask any volunteer from the audience at each group. And okay, so the transport group, can you kindly come forward? Okay. Could you come? Yeah. And please summarize the session, and what is your opinion, views, and finding, comment, and what should we do next? Okay, please. Yeah. So thank you very much. It's okay, please. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. There is no microphone.
okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Could you kindly introduce yourself and what's happened in the session, and what is your finding and takeaway? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I am Glinda Bathan Baterina. I am the Deputy Executive Director of Clean Air Asia. Clean Air Asia is an ADB assisted international NGO. We were hosted in ADB for 7 years, since 2001, and ADB helped us to become independent. So we're 20 years old. So the session was focused on how to drive markets and people to prefer electric mobility and also clean energy solutions. And so first we identified what were the challenges that countries faced in shifting to electric mobility. First, in the Philippines, for example, and I think this is common among Southeast Asian and other Asian countries. For electric mobility, first is the charging infrastructure. We all know and have heard about the, the range anxiety of people who, before they shift to electric vehicles, they want to make sure they won't run out of, power. The challenge there is it's unclear exactly who is going to invest, whether it's government or whether it's private sector. So, and then second is that the price parity between an internal combustion engine vehicle and an electric vehicle has not yet been attained. So it's still, for many markets, except for one that I'm going to speak about later, the ICE vehicles are still cheaper than electric vehicles. So the investment is significant. No? A third is that there's still a lot of awareness raising on the performance of the technology, at least for certain sectors. Let's say for the freight sector, maybe for the light duty vehicle sector, there's already confidence in the electric vehicle technology. But for other applications, maybe there's still a little bit of doubt on its performance. So those are the three. And then we went around the table to understand, which countries are represented. So obviously we had Philippine representatives, we had a Vietnamese representative, and we have a Nepali participant. And so for Philippines and Vietnam, we had more or less similar challenges. Vietnam is very aggressive in the opportunities was that the good news is that Vietnam is very aggressive in renewable energy application, but also struggling with electric vehicle uptake, which is similar to the Philippines. However, there was a bright spot where in Nepal, they have been able to implement nudges, which actually resulted in 50%, at least 50% of new vehicle imports are all electric. And so we dug deeper. So what were the nudges? First is that government is taking the lead. All new acquisitions or procurement of vehicles from government all need to be electric vehicles. And they have government and private sector investing in charging infrastructure. So there are more than 50 charging points in Kathmandu right now. And the charging tariff is cheaper when it's for electric vehicle charging compared to other applications like residential or commercial. So these are some of the nudges, that have resulted in people actually preferring to purchase electric vehicles over ICE vehicles in Nepal. So yes, and there was a lot of discussion on how financing might be made available, like the JCM is a real opportunity for countries to get financing for solarization of public schools and other clean energy solutions. I'll stop there and check with my table if I missed anything from the discussion. Any? Yes, sir. Come. Because Nepal is really leading the way, it seems.
So actually, it can be a coincidence. Actually, we had the customs duties for fossil fuel vehicles at around 250% to 300% imposed from way beginning, from 30 years maybe, 50 years. But the government does not put so much custom duties on electric vehicles. So that's that may not be the case in other countries. So maybe the other countries should raise more taxes on fossil fuel vehicles.
Any feedback from Susan?
I think what was interesting was to interpret the challenges with biases. So I think the charging, that people are worried about charging, means we are falling victim to the planning bias. We don't like to plan, the charging. In terms of cost, I think there is still lack of understanding that we actually invest in the future, right? So it's the present bias. And then on knowledge, again, it's the knowledge scarcity bias, not enough knowledge on electric vehicles. So different ways, I think, are required from government to address these three.
Thank you very much. Susan, one more question from my side, from another angle. So what is the ADB's role? because now we got the information from this Nepal, Vietnam, Philippines. So this is a knowledge among the developing member countries. Also, we have knowledge about technology, AI, IoT, whatever from Japan, from United States. So how you can incorporate and merge and share this kind, and how to organization.
Well, I'm looking at Len George there as one of the
Okay, then you'll discuss about.
one project officers, but I think as ADB is going now to the new operating model, and you've probably all heard about it, one reason for this is to really shift to solutions so that we have, modular approach to solutions, and we can bring different teams together to work together on a challenge together. I think your example, Marja, is very good, where people from agriculture sector work with the energy sector, work with social development people who understand behavior, and then the private sector comes in and a big problem is broken down into smaller problems and projects, and then we need to orchestrate and manage them together to address very complex issues and problems. So that's how we see it. The other point is we are investing currently a lot in data management. We are launching ADB's data management platform later this year. So hopefully this will also provide opportunities to actually host data, provide data to our member countries.
So can third party access to that?
Yes, that would be the goal, open data.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So I'll ask Ren to discuss later. Yes. Oh, please.
YouTube video.
No, I don't like YouTube. Okay, later you are interested. Please.
This is TV. And it's basically developed back in 1990. Because Kathmandu had a very heavy air pollution. And this EV is a very classic lead acid battery, a very heavy one. But they are still running in Kathmandu. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, now could you kindly come, and now we will ask the summary of this first table about the daytime charging and the carbon, what is that? The indicator of the hourly carbon emission. Please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Laura Kudai-Bergenova. I am from Kazakhstan, but I work for the United States Agency for International Development, Central Asian Regional Mission. We had a very interesting discussion, and we discussed both the changes in the energy distribution and production, and how it affects various countries with various socioeconomic statuses. But to start with, we discussed that there is a big change in the consumption patterns and in the production patterns. And there is a need to stimulate consumers to change their behavior, and technologies can help stimulate this change. In the past, people were promoted or stimulated to use electricity at night time, because nighttime electricity was cheaper. But that was like mostly dirty electricity from coal and oil. Now with the introduction of green technologies and sun, wind power, we see a lot of cheaper energy supplied during daytime. So there is no need to stimulate people, let's say, to do their laundries or charge their cars during nighttime, because nighttime electricity is dirty mostly, daytime electricity is clean. But how can technologies help promote that change in the behavior? And we discussed that actually there are devices that help people, how to say, consume electricity and change that consumption automatically. This device, yes, this device is, I forgot what it is called. Nest, yeah. Google Nest. This device initially is installed and tracks consumption of a typical consumer or household during 2 weeks, and that creates a baseline. And then from the baseline, it starts automatically adjusting the consumption. When, for example, in the district where that family lives, there is a peak consumption, actually, the device can reduce the consumption of a particular family, and the stimulus for it would be that the family in that time would be either not paying, or it actually can be even paid by the supplier for not consuming electricity. So it's a very interesting system. We discussed that it requires some installation input. So a family would need to buy this device, but actually, because the supplier company is interested in many families using this, they would provide it either cheap or very cheap, or could provide like a loan for the families to compensate for it. And we also discussed that there is a good way of channeling that cheap daytime electricity to, for example, steel plants or other big facilities, and it changes their behavior as well. Like we had a gentleman from the steel plant saying that in the past, the steel plant was stimulated to work at night shifts, because the nighttime electricity was cheaper. Now, with the change in the mix, it has like shifted to a new type of operation with a focus on the daytime. And we also, like we had a gentleman from China and I'm from Kazakhstan, we reflected on the fact that in China, where it is a socialist system, and in Kazakhstan, which has the Soviet past and socialist system, we have subsidized electricity. Electricity is very cheap for the population because the population just would not accept increases in tariffs. It would be a social unrest immediately. So for our countries, the incentives to change the behavior should be different before tariffs are brought to like a normal cost-reflective situation. Yeah. So maybe our table can add something else.
Sorry. I'm so interested about the steel.
Who was the steel? Who's from the steel business?
You. Before I came from the steel plant.
Okay.
Please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. When I was still a young professional, young engineer, I worked before in a steel plant and in the Philippines. So, yeah. But now I'm working in the ATV. Yeah. Before, no, steel plant in Batangas. Yeah. We have the knowledge before that during night, the electricity is cheap. So our operation manager instructed us to operate the big bulk of production at night. But now it's really changed dramatically. And when I saw the graph, during the day, the energy is clean and very cheap. So, and as our speaker told us there's a behavioral change they talk to a steel plant, a big player or big consumer to do these things. They operate in day, then that saves a lot of energy also. And the energy use is very clean during that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, we have
One more. Yeah, one
please,
more reporting back.
Yeah, who can kindly
We
supplement?
have two.
Please.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah, we
80%
forgot your name.
female.
Please, yes.
80% of female. It's good gender.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Mercy Bitasolo from Papua New Guinea University of Technology. I'll be briefly reporting to all of you with our discussion in our table. We've been discussing about the technology that have been used in the success of several examples, projects like the solar ice maker in Maldives. And we have discussed about how it relates to the Pacific Islands. One very important performance that had rise is the behavioral change. At first, we were used to the traditional thing, but then when the technology comes in, when AI already with the data, instead of doing the manual thing, with the solar ice, they have difficulty at the time with the purchase of ice, and Maldives is a tourist country, yeah. And then with that, the imports products, the marine resource where they have, because they don't have the available ice, and they have to, and it's increasing in terms of the cost. But then with the support of ADB, it's a big project, and it was, aside from the behavioral change, there was an impact in the utilization. Of course, most of the tourists would like to taste the products and the fresh one from the country. And it happens because they're able to preserve the freshness of their marine resource. So that's one thing. And also the other projects we have discussed that it also relates in other parts in the Pacific, and most in Pacific, we have a lot to offer. Even in our country, we have so much, but because we don't have enough resources to protect or to have the facilities, so it's not being offered. So have difficulty to provide even in our area in Ley City, which is the second largest city, and on the coastal, but you cannot find a fresh fish right there outside. You have to have it all iced, but with that, perhaps with the support of, hopefully with this project. And there's a lot also of discussions that relates to this in other parts of the Pacific. Another is that we have the so-called events on this is the by the zero carbon use, because if when using, mostly in the islands, they're using batteries, or they're using generators. In most cases, even in our country and the rest of the Pacific Islands. And so we were able to reduce climate change, the production so we'll be able to do a zero carbon neutral in this case in the tourist sector. And also, it was a successful story according to our speaker. And then another story in Fiji with the solar, using the AI, they were able to, instead of utilizing it in a longer period of times or at a certain period of time, it automatically switch off. And then so with that limited time they have to utilize the change of behavior of, instead of watching TV, they could utilize the available time in doing some more productive. And also there's also another case, the other case is in Maharashtra, India. It was a very, the use of AI, instead of utilizing so much water for pumping. So normally they provide watering on their plants at one time. But then with the use of AI, with the data, it provides only like a small amount of water at a certain period of time. And then also they were able to save electricity, reduce production of reduce the use of water, and at the same time increase the production of their products. So I would like to invite our friend, and she will be discussing one of the case which she had witnessed in her volunteerism.
Thank you very much.
So just reflecting on insights from the table, I mean, I took three things. I mean, there were three case studies. You had a small ice maker, you had a renewable energy integration, and you had the case of Maharashtra. Three things which I feel were very important was community participation and design of the program. Right. So that was something that, because it was at a community level, that is something which is important. Second is it typed on to the livelihood, is what I noticed across all things. So you were able to drive that behavior change because you were looking at livelihood, especially in the first case, right? And so that was the second thing which I felt was important. Third is tapping on to the solutions are very local. So again, like the Pacific Ocean example would work here when you have water as a storage, not necessarily looking at, like she spoke about battery storage, but you looked at the thermal, the water being the aspect, and that could look at peak demand, right? Whereas in the case of Maharashtra, it was something else. And in the case of, so local resources and tapping onto those to drive reduction in peak demand and encourage energy efficiency is something which was something that I took away from the three examples. Yeah, I guess that would summarize it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So it's a quite wonderful session. So Susan, could you kindly close the remark? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. We hope that you enjoyed this more interactive session. What we can see is there's a lot that we can learn from each other, from all your experience. And that's what we want to enable at ADB. The next time you will visit us at ADB, we will have a physical innovation hub where we hope that we can bring different views, experiences, local problems also together to solve them. We understand at ADB that at the center are humans, people, and we have to understand what they need and what they want and how we can change behavior towards a behavior that is conducive for a green future and to protect and value public goods of communities or of countries. And then, of course, there is money that you need to finance that, and hopefully ADB can mobilize a lot more for that. So with that, we thank you all. I thank especially you, Naoki, and the speakers here, and George, and of course, yes, exactly. And with that, enjoy the rest of the conference today, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So our journey will be continued. Thank you very much.